Welcome back to my garage. Last time you saw me sleeving this 48mm Electron carb to make it the equivalent area of a 33mm carb. The reason I want to do this is because a huge carb like this has a huge bowl, which means it holds a lot of fuel. It has some extra mass compared to a smaller carb. It means it's more tolerant to relatively high frequency vibrations from a high revving small two-stroke engine like the one I'm running. And also this carb is set up for running gasoline, but I'm running methanol and nitromethane. I need to run much richer versus on gasoline. As I've made the bore much smaller, this carb is now much richer than it's supposed to be, which is good for my purpose. I'm building a supercharged 50cc two-stroke engine, by the way, if this is your first time here. I've cleaned this, now I'm going to reassemble and we're going to test it under pressure. I think it's going to work, for a reason I'll show you later. This carb was kindly donated by Mike Dunbar. He was going to use it for a totally different application. That never happened. In that application, he was going to run this fuel pump, which came supplied with it, and this special hose. This is what makes me think this will work. This fuel pump is 4 to 7 psi. And it's supposed to be run with this return line with a restrictor in it. I'm gonna put this return line with restrictor after my fuel pressure regulator, which puts out 6 psi. This should actually be exactly what the carb wants from this pump and that special return line. We'll hook this up and see if the carb will hold the fuel inside or start leaking. Hopefully it'll hold the fuel inside and we're ready to go. I'll hook this line in between the pressure regulator and my low pressure gauge. This is our return line. There's actually two because there's a T here. We'll just keep it as is. Now we'll see if the float needle will leak with this fuel pressure, and we'll also see what kind of fuel pressure that is. Quick explanation if you didn't see the previous video. As I'm running a supercharger and blow through, I need fuel pressure into the float bowl to be a slight bit higher than actual boost pressure. That's why I'm running this high pressure EFI pump and this high pressure EFI fuel pump 2 carburetor pressure regulator, which has a boost reference, should rise 1-to-1 with boost pressure. I'll turn on the pump and see if the carb will hold the pressure, and we'll check what kind of pressure that is. It should be around 3 psi. That's what Electron told me it's supposed to take, and as it was supplied with a 4 to 7 psi pump and this return line with a restrictor, I'm assuming this restrictor will take fuel pressures between 4 to 7 psi down to like around 3 psi or lower. We'll see. I am seeing 6 psi though. That return line isn't really working too well, but the carb is holding fuel. It's not leaking. Seems like this is happening in every episode now. I'm an idiot. With this unregulated pump putting out 4 to 7 psi, this restriction will work, regulating pressure down to acceptable pressure for the carb. With that restriction after my pressure regulator, that regulator will just compensate and bump up pressure according to the little leak here. On the plus side, it seems like the carb can handle 6 psi. Fuel level is sitting pretty high though, but we can adjust the floats to make that level lower, make it less flood happy. Here's the float needle valve, and here's that tab that pushes on that float needle valve. I'm gonna bend this tab so that it pushes earlier on the float valve, and in that way the level will be lower in the carb. I'll use this screwdriver to slightly bend it down, make it sit lower in relation to the floats. So that's quite a bit lower, but we're also running quite a bit higher pressure than what the carb is supposed to be seeing. We'll see how it behaves now. It is sitting higher, but I don't think it's unacceptably higher. A little bit lower than the gasket surface here. Gotta make sure it won't flood if I tilt it. Like that. Seems to be fine. I machined this little intake off camera last week. It's nothing special. Let's get it mounted and get the carb on there. I did get a bunch of different hoses and pipes to experiment, and I think I found a good solution. Come on! It's just the tiniest little bit left. Whew. As you can see, they almost line up in a 45-degree angle. My plan is to make this a little bit shorter so that this will fit in between here. That's the plan. Quickly cut off 20 millimeters and I'll be back. We're almost there. About 20 millimeters from the other side too. That should pretty much be it. I think that'll work just fine. A little bit off, but this is silicone hose. Doesn't matter if it's a few degrees off. Kind of ugly having this sticking out like that. Should really get a 90-degree fitting and see if I can have it sitting like this. That would be neater. For now, we'll just leave it here. That's the dump valve, by the way. I've also installed this air filter, the size you typically see on most 50cc engines. I need to install a fitting to take pressure from here and into the float bowl and also to the fuel pressure regulator. I'm going to try with this normal fitting first. If we're having trouble with fueling, we'll try a Pitot tube. That's the tube pointing towards the flow, which will register dynamic pressure, not just static pressure in the pipe. We'll try with static pressure first, because that's much simpler to set up. These two vent lines will hook into this. I need to get a suitable small T. We need two T's, one for these two and one for pressure to the regulator. I read a lot about Pitot tubes online. It seems like all the turboed carb guys are swearing by them. I've changed my mind. I think we'll start off with a Pitot tube and then remove it if it's troublesome. From all I've read, it makes jetting much easier. It also makes the transition from off boost to on boost much better. It makes sense because the Pitot tube senses the dynamic pressure. I'm going to try to bend a really nice tight radius in this tube. And that's going to be that Pitot tube. I'm filling it with sand so it won't crush when I try to bend it. Well, that's no success. That radius is probably too tight. A little bit more. That's close to 90. And it didn't crush, nor tear. Perfect. And this will sit like this inside the 3-inch diameter pipe. So pretty much in the middle, which should be great. It's morning next day. After my camera died last night, I finished that Pitot tube. I'll show you in a second. First, I got an idea here. About 6-7 psi, that's as low as this regulator will go. Carb seemed to handle it, but I don't think that will be the case when the engine starts vibrating and stuff. I'm gonna open it up and see if I can shorten the spring a little bit. Hopefully that spring is long enough so there's still some pre-tension even though we shorten it. We'll see. This spring is kept between the adjustment screw in here and the membrane here. Then on the other side of that membrane, this plunger which shuts off the return valve. With a weaker spring, this will open sooner at lower pressure and return more fuel. I should really use a weaker spring. I'm not sure if cutting this down will help much. Let's see how much tension there's on here at the absolute lowest setting. There's not really any preload at all. I think we'll need to put in a softer spring. I've got this spring from an RC shock. It's softer. Should have been a little bit larger diameter though. I think it'll work. Might be a good idea to find a pressure regulator that can natively do 3 psi. You can get one locally, but it's really expensive. Might just go do that though. Not everything being experimental might be worth the money. We'll see how this behaves now. We're looking for around 3 psi. I've also taken the filter out of the system. It was sitting before the pump. I think it was causing some low pressure cavitation problems. It was mentioned in the comments too. With the new softer spring, we're actually seeing more pressure. We need to get a better regulator, more suitable one. The beard is gone, and I went and bought this Aeromotive 13301. It's from 3 psi and up, which means I should be able to run 3 psi, which is what the carb wants. My expectations are high. This was not cheap. We have to install some plugs and nipples and stuff and let that cure for half an hour. While waiting for the sealant to cure, let's start working on that pulley. Here's that Pitot tube installed. It's pointing towards the flow. I'll take it off and show you. Not sure if you can see it in there, but it bends like this and then it points back towards where the flow is coming from. This is to create a little bit higher pressure in the bowl versus in the venturi. Make that pressure differential between the venturi and the bowl larger. I've kept this one in case this is all shit and we need to take pressure from just static pressure. I don't think it's time to start working on the pulleys yet. Time to install the slide and see if we have enough clearance here for a cable. Before we install this, I'll set the metering rod to its richest position. We might need to run this push-pull, but we'll try the normal. We'll try in the normal way first. This won't work. There's too much bend in the cable. It binds. I thought I had one of these with a 90-degree bend in it, but I can't find it. We'll have to make something out of something else. Well, obviously you have to make something out of something else. How else would you make something? Out of nothing. Yet again, my workplace is starting to look like the Empire of Dirt.
Look ahead, look the sky, look the weather and the lead. Blow high, blow low, and so sail we. I see a wreck to windward and a lofty ship to thee, a sailing down along the coast of High Barbary. Hail her, oh captain, he called o'er the side.
Just barely fits in there. That's good enough. Perfect. Now it's just a simple matter of making this fit this. I'll have to remove this protrusion and turn a recess for this to press down into. Before that, let's test our new pressure regulator. Should be cured now. First up, check if there's any leaks. Then adjust pressure to the lowest it will go, hopefully 3 psi or lower. Then hook up the carb and see if it will hold 3 psi. It should. We might need to readjust the float level now, or maybe not, as the carb is sitting at such an angle. We'll start with how it is now and go from there. First, check for leaks. Goes a slight bit below 3. I'll set it at 3. Probably more stable within the specified settings. So 3 psi. A steady 3 psi. Perfect. Perfect.
Ship to thee, a sailing down along the coast of high Barbary. Hail her, O captain, he called o'er the side.
I need to find a tensioner, preferably something that has dynamic tension, not just static. And I need to space this bracket out a little bit. I really want the belt to ride at least here. Actually, that's the furthest in it can go. I really want my belt riding here, not out there. That's per the Rotrex instructions. And find a tensioner or something suitable for building a tensioner. Found this at a local shop. It's a cam belt tensioner for a Volkswagen Golf 3, some Audis, a bunch of VAG cars. It's spring tensioned and it has this eccentric bushing, which should work fine. I don't think cam belts are tightened as tight as these multi-rib belts. So we'll see how this works. Hoping it'll give enough tension. I don't have any belt measuring equipment. We'll just have to go by feel. First we'll have to drill out this third mounting hole and get it securely mounted. It does not want to move past that point, which I find odd. Oh, I see why. It's butting up against this. Fix that with a little filing and I'll be back. Supercharger oiling system. First, I need to see if there's clearance between my bracket and the banjo fittings. There's not enough clearance for these plugs. I had to shave a little bit off to get the bracket to seat down there. Might not be the case for these though. Otherwise, we'll have to grind a little relief. Looks like there's clearance. Maybe we should grind a little bit off just to be safe. I think we'll do that. I will have to loosen up the in fitting for bleeding the system, so I won't tighten this fully now. I'll wait until I've got it installed. The highest point in the whole oiling system needs to sit lower than the axle on the supercharger. Need to mount it down on the floor like this. We might need to find a workaround for this when mounting it in a bike. Now, per the instructions, I should fill the canister with traction fluid without exceeding the maximum mark on the dipstick, measured with the thread fully engaged. Nice color. We're at the minimum. Let's fill that to max. You bleed the system by loosening the fitting into the supercharger. Then applying some compressed air to the filler hole until you see oil seeping out. Do not exceed 15 psi, the manual says. Now the air should be out of the system. I was a little bit too trigger happy and caused a huge mess here. Well, not huge. Turned an adapter piece off camera yesterday to make this pulley fit this electric motor. Now we can use that to confirm the oiling system is working and do a little running in of the engine. Dump in a little bit more. I'll leave this running for a while now to run in the supercharger. A really gentle run in, that is. While that's going on, let's install a nipple for the blow-off valve. My run-in procedure is kind of noisy, so I won't do much talking. Been running for 2 hours now, no leaks, everything seems to be in order. Space on the SD card again, and my wireless mic won't work. We're pretty much done now. We'll start it up next time. See you next time.